Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for making the trek out here to Howard County. What a beautiful facility, isn't it? So we have a lot of friends in the room, and I certainly, my name's Clay Stamp, and I'm the governor's lead for his effort to combat, or I should say our effort to combat the heroin and opioid crisis that is devastating our communities across Maryland. And certainly it's my honor as a long-serving emergency manager who know pretty much everybody in the room to work with you. And so today is an exciting day. We hope to set a tempo of fast-moving talks, TED-style talks we like to call them, so that we can bring up about 13 different promising practices today as teasers so that we might consider replicating them to other counties. It's an opportunity to share best practices, ideas, thoughts, get to know each other. We're stronger together than we are apart, we know that. And so again, I thank you for being here. Great, thank you all very much. This is exciting. We have a true cross-representation from everyone in the state of Maryland. It's very exciting. Thank you all again very much. So we have a great audience here of participants. We're gonna move through some introductions here, and then we're gonna introduce Jill, who's gonna talk to us and share a human story. So it's so important for us in doing this work that we keep it real and remember why we're here every day. And so she has come to us today and is going to share a story, and we're going to give her a safe place to be able to feel comfortable in sharing that in a moment. But before that, I would like to take this moment to thank our Lieutenant Governor, Boyd Rutherford, bring you greetings on behalf of our Governor, Larry Hogan, who both are quite passionate about what we are working on. And if it were not for the support of both of them, day in and day out, it would be much more difficult to get the level of attention that we have in dealing with this matter. So again, without further ado, I would like to present to you the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, Boyd Rutherford. Please give him a hand.
Well, thank you and good morning. And you know, it's great that you've come together to share best practices and something that is definitely needed. Many of you probably have heard me say this before, but I guess it was probably closer to 4 years ago when we were traveling around the state, the governor and I campaigning, we heard over and over again the same issue when we would go into local communities, counties, towns, cities, and ask the typical question of an official, what are the biggest issues you're confronting here in your local community? And we were hearing it over and over again, it was heroin. And it didn't matter if we were in Baltimore or if we were in Frederick or Hurlock or Elkton or St. Mary's County. It didn't matter where it was what town, what community, how large, how small, we were hearing the same things over and over again. And so since being elected, and really starting before that, we've made it one of our priorities to try to come up with some solutions and policies on how we can address this. And we took an approach of looking at, one, prevention, because we have to stop that pipeline of new users and those who are falling prey to this addiction, as well as treatment. And with treatment, you have to think in terms of recovery, because people do fall back, and how you address those issues as well. And then there is a law enforcement component in terms of stopping the organizations who are bringing the heroin and now fentanyl and carfentanil into the state. And we know that we've had a significant challenge in terms of an evolution of the problem with the widespread distribution of fentanyl and carfentanil, which now represents over 70% of the fatalities that we're seeing from opioid overdoses. While the prescription medications have declined, and even from some of our data, our prescription monitoring data, we're seeing that doctors are prescribing less opioids. The usage and the fatality associated with fentanyl is driving the death rate that we're seeing around the state, and so we have to address that. Last year, we had a little more than 1,000 opioid-related deaths at this point last year, or really through the first 3 months of the year, or 9 months of the year. And almost 800 of those were related to fentanyl or carfentanil. But I'm glad to be here because as we all have found out at the state level and really recognized early on, it's going to take an effort from everyone, an all-hands-on-deck approach to address this issue at the state, at the federal, at the local level, at the community level, in the places of worship, in the educational system, to address this challenge and this crisis that we're seeing. And we now have, as some of you are members of the various opioid intervention teams, which we have in all 24 jurisdictions in Maryland, those efforts will help us all help those in need and those who are suffering from addiction, as well as preventing additional ones from coming on, falling prey to that same challenge and that sickness. So it is great that you're coming together and sharing information. We hear at the state level what a lot of the locals are doing and their success in certain areas and certain approaches that are working, and it's good that it can be shared, because if all of you are able to bring success, then that means the state will be successful. And so I just want to thank you again for participating in this. Thank you, Clay, for helping to pull this together. Thank you, Mr. County Executive, for hosting this. And it's always great that you host it in the county where I live, so I don't have to come as far. Sorry about that for some of the others in here. But no, I'm glad that this is, that everyone is coming together and working together to address this crisis that we have. This is I would say, the largest crisis that not only the state but the country is dealing with right now from a public health standpoint in particular. It's killing more people, damaging more families and communities than anything else that we can think of. It's frightening. And, unfortunately, I mean, we're hearing more than what we did 4 years ago in the media, but we still are not hearing as much and as much focus on it from a media standpoint than I think needs to be the case. So thank you for being here, and please share best practices. Thank you again.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for your attendance today and for your continued support every day. And so it now gives me great pleasure to introduce to you County Executive Alan Kittleman of Howard County, again, a leader in the area. We thank you for your support, and
Thanks, Clay.
welcome.
Thank you, Clay. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I do appreciate the fact that the Lieutenant Governor lives in Howard County. I've known him many, many, many years, and Howard County is kind of a central place, too. I think that's, of course, the reason why, even though it's good that you live here, but I think it's more central. Thanks for being here on this very important day and very important information to get out to make sure we can share with the best practices around the state. This is certainly an epidemic, a tragic epidemic that hits everywhere. A lot of people think about Howard County as being one of the wealthiest places in the country and one of the best places to live in America. We have the problem too, and we got to all be together and admit that we have these problems, and we had to figure out how we can deal with it. In Howard County so far this year, we've had 216 non-fatal or fatal overdoses. We've had 55 people die in Howard County due to overdose abuse. 55, much more than that we had last year. We've got to continue to work on this. We've got to make changes. We've got to figure out how we can make it happen. You're talking about, or Clay was about the prescription drugs. I remember just 7 or 8 years ago when my daughter had her wisdom teeth out. She got a prescription for 30 pills of oxycodone. I don't think she used one, thank goodness, but she got a prescription for 30. And I wasn't thinking about it. We went and got the prescription filled, and we had in our prior medicine cabinet, which is another problem we have, of course, is everyone's got in their medicine cabinet. It's probably been there. And we've gotten rid of that now, but people have so much in there. My son just had his wisdom teeth out about a couple months ago. And the one thing my wife and I said was, we do not want any obiturate prescribed to him, nothing. He'll use Tylenol PM, whatever you have to do, extra straight Tylenol, and he was fine, and sometimes you might need to use it, but we really got to be careful about how often we do that. And I think we all got to be vigilant on that. An interesting thing happened just the other day. We had a press conference we had scheduled a couple weeks ago. The Aetna Foundation has generously provided Howard County with 408 packages of Narcan, so we can put them in every one of our AED locations throughout Howard County and all of our public buildings. That's 816 doses, since there's 2 in each packet. And so we brought people together. We're going to announce it. In the morning, we were announcing it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That morning, we learned of an incident that just kind of spoke volumes for why we need to have this throughout the state of Maryland, frankly. In our circuit courthouse, our sheriff, Bill McMahon, who I don't think is here today, but he had taken the initiative to make sure that they had Narcan already in their AEDs at the circuit courthouse. And he made sure that the deputy sheriffs were being trained in how to use Narcan. And that day, at 2 o'clock, we were planning the press conference. That day in the morning, a gentleman overdosed at the courthouse. And the deputy sheriff detected it and remembered, we have Narcan in the AED. Had someone run into the AED location, grabbed the Narcan, brought it back out. They provided 2 doses to this gentleman, and they kept him alive until the EMS folks could get there, who continued to work with him, and that gentleman is alive today. That's why it's important to have it available. That's why it's important to train people. So in Howard County, we're also going to encourage all of our employees to be trained. We're giving them all 1 hour of administrative leave to do that, so they don't have to take time from their help. We want to encourage them to do that, because you just don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know who it might be. You don't know when it might be there. And so that's important to us here in Howard County. Out of the 161 non-fatal overdoses in Howard County, 90% were saved through Narcan. So when we have 55 people die in Howard County so far, it could easily have been 150. Now, we can't Narcan ourselves out of this, and I know that. Our fire chief says it all the time. We can't Narcan ourselves out of this, but it's certainly something we need to do to help protect and save people. We're also focusing a lot of resources on hiring folks who can help us in our behavioral health and help us with our health department and other areas. But this is something that we can all learn from each other. I've learned a lot. We had an opioid summit a year ago, October, and that's what you get everyone together and you learn things. And I learned a lot, and we've been trying to do things that other jurisdictions are doing. And that's what I hope you'll be able to do today. Thank you for taking the time to be together. Thank you for taking the time to study this issue. Thank you for caring about the people of Howard County, the people of Maryland. This is an epidemic that hits everybody, folks. You know, we look at our Howard County map, and we go by zip code to see where the overdoses are occurring. Every zip code in Howard County. It's not like it's all in the areas where it might be more urban. It's not all in the areas just where rural or anything like that. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. So thank you. Thank you, Clay, for your leadership. I thank the governor for his commitment to this, and Lieutenant Governor, and I hope that we can continue to move forward. Thank you very much.
We're going to call up Dennis Schrader. Dennis is our Secretary of Health for the state of Maryland. Dennis is not a stranger to state government. He was our Homeland Security Director under Governor Ehrlich, where we worked together. Dennis actually served as the #3 position in FEMA at one point, so he's not a stranger to emergency management. A very intelligent fellow, engineer by trade, and a driver. So welcome.
Thank you, Clay. Thank you. All right, very quickly, and I wanted to thank the Lieutenant Governor for being here. Thank you, sir, and thank you for your leadership. And I got to say, Mr. Executive, you said 2 things that really were fantastic because it tells us the message is good. The story about the dental and the opioids, and the other story about the medicine cabinet. That means the message is getting through. So that was very gratifying. Thank you. Let me just say, I see this as a capstone event for a long trek. This past year has been very busy. When I stepped into this job a year ago in December, I was quite frankly alarmed because I got a briefing that said we were losing 5 people to 6 people a day, dying every day in this state. So that means 5 people died, 6 people died yesterday, 5 people, 6 people died today, and 5 or 6 people will die tomorrow. That is alarming. And for those of us who are familiar, or immersed in the emergency management or emergency services business, the first two objectives of anything we're doing is what? Save lives and protect property. So there's nothing more important than saving lives. And when we get data that says we've got that level of death rate, it was alarming to me that we were not mobilized in a way that was commensurate with the issue. So over the holiday last year, we got together with Russ Strickland. He immediately understood what I was saying, is that this is beyond the ability of the health department to drive this issue. This is way too big. And if we try to do it ourselves like we had been, we were going to fail. So I said, we need to mobilize the entire state of Maryland to start addressing this problem. We had the support of the governor and lieutenant governor. That wasn't the problem. We had to mobilize the rest of the state. So for those of you who I'm very familiar, I'm sure you're very familiar, it's almost 10 years now we've had the National Response Framework in place. Doc Lumpkins was there with me at FEMA when we put that together. And the whole idea of the National Response Framework, we've been pumping money into the states for national incident management training to have every state capable of addressing unusual circumstances that occur, because you can't predict what the next big thing is going to be. But this is the next big thing. There are over 2,000 people died in this state because of this problem. And, we're starting to bend the numbers a little bit, but we've got probably a 5 to 10 year road to travel at least to start to get this under control. So last year at the holiday time, met with Russ Strickland, Glenn Fuston, who's the head of the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention, and I said, we need to get public health and public safety and the emergency management community mobilized right now. And that's what we did. And then, not too long afterwards, the governor issued an executive order to establishing the Opioid Operations Command Center. And not too long after that, I was able to coax Mr. Stamp to join us as the executive director. Best thing we ever did. He's fantastic. He's one of the top emergency managers in the country. I don't know if people know that. He stood watches down in the Hurricane Center. He was down in Katrina. He's one of the best in the business, and we're very lucky. And he stepped up to this task. He didn't have to do that. And he's been all over the state, because I can't do it myself. This is not a health department problem alone. We need to be joined with every public health and public safety resource in the state every single day. And that's what we're doing, and that's why we're mobilized the way we are. So we've accomplished, we're almost done, but we're moving in the right direction to mobilize the state. And as you also know, what do we say within the emergency management business? Every incident, every crisis is locally generated and moves up. And that's why you're here. We didn't have the ability to do this a year ago. We have now mobilized this through Clay and the OOCC and your efforts statewide, but we have a lot more to do. Some good news is the numbers seem to be bending a little bit, but they're way too high, and until we start getting them down by many orders of magnitude from where they are today, we're not going to be done. So the fact that you're here today, together with the emergency managers and the local health officers, talking about your best practices and how you're partnering is very gratifying. The role of the emergency manager is to coordinate on behalf of the executive in every local jurisdiction, whatever that executive authority is. Local health officer, technical expertise, management of the health process, working together, but bringing law enforcement, public safety, and all of those resources, behavioral health to the table. That is no small task, and that's where we're looking for the emergency managers. 10 years ago, if you recall, at the Department of Homeland Security, the rallying cry nationally was that give the ball to the emergency managers to drive change. And that's what we're looking for. We're putting the ball out there, and through Clay's leadership, we're making progress. What I'm anxious to hear about today is some of the best practices that you're doing. I did want to recognize, we heard one the other day, I'll close with this. Lori Brewster, who couldn't be here today, Dave Shipley, the emergency manager in Wycomico County. they're producing outcomes. We're actually seeing a change in the numbers. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for those practices that are going to change the direction of this crisis. So thank you for being here today. Thank you all for what you're doing, and look forward to hearing some of the best practices. Clay, back to you.
Great, thank you, Dennis, for your words and your leadership, sir. Now I'd like to introduce to you Russell Strickland, the Executive Director of the Maryland Emergency Management Agency, a friend, longtime serving fire and EMS professional in Maryland. Thank you, Russell.
Thank you, Clay. Thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you, Dennis. You said everything I was going to say. I appreciate it very, very much. It's been an absolutely fascinating year, and if any of you have been around me for the last 10 years, I've been saying very clearly this is not your grandparents' emergency management anymore. We simply are not. We're a group of folks who can handle and are focused on disaster risk reduction and consequence management. And this particular issue falls clearly within disaster risk reduction. We collaborate, we facilitate, we build a situational awareness, which is what we're trying to do statewide, and I think doing through your efforts extremely well, and bring that together so we have a little bit of resource management into it all the same words and comments we use, whether we have a hurricane, whether we have a snowstorm, whether we have a civil unrest. So this is, in fact, where it belongs. I believe that 100%. Look right at you, Dennis, and tell you, I believe that 100%. When Dennis came to me a year ago, and I said, beyond any shadow of a doubt, we're going to take this on, you would not believe the skepticism that I took internally, externally, worldly, because Maryland was stepping forward to do this. Today, there are many states who continually contact us, Clay, to see how we're doing it and how it is they can do it in their state, because they have moved it out of the realm of coordination and facilitation by health to emergency management, who is a neutral organization who constantly works multiple agencies and coordinates and facilitates them for the good of all. So I thank you very, very much for what you've done this past year. You've proven that it can work. We're going to move now into almost a recovery, because if you remember Hurricane Katrina, they're still recovering. And this is no different. We will be into a long-term recovery. We will be involved in the background with the crisis management and the management end of that throughout. So we're here as a partner for the long haul. So again, thank you very, very much, and look forward to what you all are going to share today. Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, moving right along, I'm real excited about having Michael Sanderson, who is not going to be able to be in the room, but Natasha Mayhew is here for Michael. I'm really excited about being able to announce a new partnership. And that's a partnership with what we are doing collectively with the Maryland Association of Counties and the Maryland Municipal League. That's going to multiply what we're doing as far as engagement and communication. So, Natasha, we'd like to invite you for a couple words. Thank you. And we'll give her a welcome.
Good morning, everyone. So I'd just like to start by first saying Michael Sanderson sends his sincerest apologies. He had something come up last minute this morning. But I would like to say MACo is so happy to be here and to partner on this event. The opioid crisis is extremely important to our members and their communities. At many of our conferences, we hold sessions to highlight the opioid crisis, as well as trainings for Narcan. And so to be here today, we're very excited to hear more about these promising practices and to share those promising practices. So we'd like to propose that as you're taking pictures, as you're posting on social media about this event, that you use the hashtag OITShare, and MACo would like to prominently have coverage of this event on our blog tomorrow morning. Our blog goes out to 9,000 people, and we think it would be a great benefit for them to know more about the partnerships we have here, the promising practices, and that they could continue to learn from this. So I'd like to again thank Clay and his team, everyone that helped bring this event together, everyone that's here in the room, Secretary Schrader, and the administration, and we look forward to the rest of the events today. Thank you.
Okay, moving right along. Thank you, Natasha, very much, and thank you for your support. I'm excited about the things we'll do together with MACo and the Maryland Municipal League. Next on the agenda, I would like to invite Jillian Beach to join me. As I mentioned earlier, it's really important that we all keep it real. I hear that everywhere. And we're dealing with a situation that we don't want to become a statistical exercise. And it's so easy to fall into that rut. And so I had the opportunity with our team to meet with Jillian a few weeks back. And Jillian told a story of a personal impact related to this crisis. And so please give her a warm welcome and let her know through that she's in a safe place to share a human moment with each of us. Thank you, Jillian.
Good morning. I am not a politician, so I am very scared to be up here speaking with you. And I'm going to do my best to keep it together. And I promise I'm not being an obnoxious millennial that's looking at their phone the whole time. I actually have a few notes of things I wanted to touch on and make sure I don't talk forever. So I've been thinking about this for a while. I committed to doing this for Clay and for Katie. And I thought about not doing it because it's just really scary. And it's really, for me, it's because I don't know if I can do it justice of what it actually feels like when there's someone that you love who has, your blood running through their veins, who looks like you, who grew up with you, that is all of a sudden alive, but their life is gone, and they're actually just more like a zombie. I grew up in a really good family. I actually grew up in a law enforcement family and a family of emergency service personnel. So I have military members of my family that then became police officers and firefighters. My younger brother is actually a Prince George's County firefighter. And my grandfather, when he came out of the Navy, he also was a PG County firefighter. My grandmother was on the Ladies Auxiliary. My father was a Prince George's County police officer his entire career. His older brother, my mom's youngest brother, and my cousin actually is currently still in the police force in PG County. I had the benefit of growing up in a nice home. Neither of my parents allowed any alcohol in our home because there is that propensity in our family and things that they experienced growing up. So they wanted to give us the benefit of not having that be a factor. I was very fortunate. We grew up with I had 3 instant best friends, my brothers, and I always felt very safe and protected and loved, and I know I had it better than a lot of people. And growing up, I would say, if I'm being completely honest with you, I didn't think that this kind of thing would touch my family, and it's just ignorance, and I understand that now. We had access to resources. We had a father that would come home that did protect and serve the community that he grew up in, that did good work and genuinely instilled in us the importance of caring about other people, and my mom too. So, when I first noticed that my brother just wasn't right, he was actually part of the Talented and Gifted program in Prince George's County before we moved to Calvert County, and he had a genius IQ and always had an amazing aptitude to do well at anything. And then he became someone that couldn't even put sentences together. He became a very noticeable absence in our life. He became someone whose face I saw on the cover of the Baynet newspaper, and other people were kind enough on social media to post it to my page so that I could see my brother. The day I got engaged, he called me from jail. It's something that has just changed me in a way that I didn't expect. I was always raised to have a tremendous sense of compassion for other people. You know, I was raised Catholic, so in church, you know, when we say different prayers and blessings, we did pray for people who are in prison, people who are suffering with addiction. And you know, I would go through those motions, but it really didn't touch me the way it does now. Because I had mentioned to Clay that unlike other things, I've heard people say and throw around the word choice, but when someone goes down that path, that word choice doesn't really capture it. They've lost that choice. They're not even aware of how they function. I appreciate all of you for doing this, because it could just as easily be your family. You know, you're representing a group of people that, like myself, were able to have the benefit of an education, have a good job, live in a great place like the state of Maryland. And it could very easily be your brother. It could be your son, your daughter, your sister, a parent. It doesn't really matter. And it just breaks my heart that my younger brother responds to calls, and it could just easily be our older brother, Josh. That my mom was in Al-Anon for 33 years, and now her son is where he is. My father arrested people for doing the same thing. My parents should be coasting into their retirement, and instead they're tethered to his addiction. Because now my dad's on the other side of that, having to navigate the prison system, visitations. You know, I thought about having these very detailed notes and being very organized like I am in most other things in my life. But there's really no amount of time or words that would accurately capture this. Unlike when someone dies from an addiction, this just doesn't have that closure, that sense of they're now at peace, that suffering has ended, that you will see them again, or at least that's what I believe. This is something where I fear for his safety. I fear that he's in a place where, you know, there was a federal indictment handed down with 80 charges because of the drugs running through the prison. I don't necessarily know that the punishment fits the crime, though I've raised in a family and I truly do believe in justice. I just want you to know that when you're doing the things you're doing every day and you're feeling really burned out and you wonder what it's all for, it's so that you don't have to go through this. So that there's not always that one person missing from every photo, but you know they're out there. So you don't go. I went home to visit some friends in Calvert County, and I get these like sidebar conversations where someone pulls me aside and whispers and says, "How is your brother?" I would just ask that you just remember that. You're doing it for people like us, taxpayers, law-abiding. I like to think we're pretty funny. But it's really just about compassion. Compassion for other people. Not allowing others to use labels. My brother's not a loser. He's not a piece of crap. He's not any of these things. He's a human being who had an injury and was treated with pain pills and then became addicted to them. And it just kind of spiraled out of control, and it became a method of coping. There obviously, this doesn't happen in a vacuum, and there was a lot of other factors, but his blue eyes aren't blue anymore, and he's not this muscular, buff guy. He became very thin. He lost everything. He did have a nice home. He had a wife, a beautiful son, and the benefit of a family that would do everything together and laugh and cry and joke and be supportive, and that's all still the case, but he's just not there anymore. And now when I try to see him, I can't even touch him because there's a barrier in between us. And that's really hard to do, because I think the one thing that would help him is a hug. But because people have ulterior motives where he's at, I can't hug him. And that's been one of the really hard things. It turns you into somebody you don't think that you're ever going to be. I get so scared, like, what if he calls and I miss that call? If I miss that call, that might be the only opportunity I have to speak with him, and what if that's the last time? What if he's in such despair that he uses in prison, and I know he can get drugs there, and that was it, and I missed that call. And it has affected every aspect of our family. It affects every aspect of our being as a human being, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. I do things like just even getting in the shower, and I think he can't even do this by himself. He doesn't even have that privacy. He's lost that right. He's lost his freedom because he committed a crime to steal something, to buy drugs. And I pray that each of you just not let the political crap get in the way of doing the real work. I do believe there is a way. There always is. I will not give up. I just ask that you don't. And just know that I do think that you're here because you have a purpose. And if you can stay true to that we can all just have a little more peace, a little more love. You can love your neighbor. You can love my brother. And just remember that it's pervasive, and it's death of a life in a different way. And let's not have all the different families affected be let down by some sort of stupidity that we can all overcome about what it's really about, helping each other, loving each other. And I just really thank you for what you're doing. And know that if you're in it, we're in it too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jillian. Thank you. Okay, well, Jillian says we need to get to work, right? And we need to get to work for the right reason, and that is why we're here. So I have a few words before we get into the meat of today, which is really sharing promising practices. And, what I want to say is, some of the things have been said already, but where we're going to make a difference is at the local level. It's where you are. So, the governor has us spinning up coordination, finding new stakeholders, walking into a room with people that we normally don't talk to, and talking about a crisis where we say, oh, wow, here's an opportunity. That opportunity turns into an effort, an objective that we chase. But truly, at the state level, we are only trying to get out of your way so that you can make a difference in the street. And we recognize that. We know the numbers are bad. We're going to finish this year with more fatalities than we had last year. We've already had more non-fatal overdoses show up to the 49 emergency rooms across Maryland. We've already surpassed that number. But we don't need to get hung up on that. We need to get to work. And we need to recognize good things are happening. And they are. Ultimately, we want to see the number of deaths drop, and we want to see the number of non-fatal overdose drop. But we're seeing things like programs being implemented, over 70 programs that you've put forward with performance measures to see whether they're going to work or not. That doesn't even talk about what you've already been doing that we're going to hear about today. It's exciting. When we look at numbers of the weight, we categorize about the weight of return drugs during take-back days, we are steadily seeing that weight go up. We're seeing more people turning in their unused medications. We're seeing more programs in schools. We measure drug seizures with our law enforcement partners. We're seeing numbers go up. We're seeing advancements in the areas of prevention, enforcement, and expanding access to treatment. The IMD waiver with the Health Care Commission under the leadership of Dennis Schrader, the Health Secretary, has allowed treatment providers to double or more than double their capacity to treat patients. So good things are happening, and we need to talk about those good things because we can get sucked into how bad it is and how bad it is, and we know we don't need to forget that, but we need to know there are good things happening. We're going to hear about them in a few minutes. We need to remember the balanced approach, and I never thought it would be so difficult to sell balance as it is. As an emergency manager, and all you in the room who are emergency managers know that what we do, our talent is to get really smart people in a room that know about whatever crisis that we're dealing with. If it's an earthquake, we have geologists that we get up with. If it's a hurricane, we have the Weather Service and the Hurricane Center. In this case, it's our health sector that we're supporting, right? But in those crises, it's a no-brainer. We all get in the room, we say, okay, we have to evacuate from a hurricane, we have to open shelters, all clear, we clean up, we move home, right? This is different. It's been a struggle for us as emergency managers to figure out how to coordinate this thing. What is success? Where's the end? That doesn't defray us from doing what's right. We're in, right? So then we got to get the smart people around the room. Then we figure out how difficult it is to sell balance. We have people that say, do not spend any effort on anything but treating your sick and injured. Expand treatment. That is the answer. And they feel strongly about it. We have people that say, don't worry about that. They made a choice. Too bad. That's out there. Prevention. It's all about prevention. Or it's all about enforcement. You know what? It's about all of it. And we need to break down the barriers that prevent us from the balanced approach. Because I said it again and again and again. Look, we have not prioritized treatment for substance use disorder in this country. And we were hit with a crisis. We need to make sure that we use the capacity we have now, and we need to expand it strategically. Yes, we know that we don't want to arrest people that have substance use disorders that need to be in treatment. But make no mistake, there are businesses in business to provide a supply and to poison individuals on the street. Drug trafficking organization. We have to go after them. Hold them at bay while we do what needs to be done for the long game, and that's prevention through education. And we can do it as a country. We've done it before. We've done it with smoking. We've done it with AIDS. And that's the long game, right? But we need all three, and it's so important. Anyway, so now we're going to get to work, and I'm going to hand it off to Birch, who really does all the work. Yeah, I acknowledge that. Huh? So Birch Barron is the Deputy Director of the Opioid Operational Command Center, which, again, I didn't name it. We're not a command center. We're a coordination center. We're there to support you. And I'm going to introduce Birch. We're going to move ahead with the promising practices. We want the tempo to move fast. This is a teaser. This allows you to share what you've done, 13 of them, so that we can potentially replicate those across Maryland. After you present, we're going to give some certificates, take a quick picture, move to the next one. So Birch, I'm handing it off to you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Clay. For the rest of the day, we're going to try and move away from the podium. The name of today really is inspiration. We've asked a lot of people to come and talk today and condense what frequently is 1, 3, 5 years worth of work into 10 minutes. Not to tell you everything about what they're doing, but to give you enough information to say, maybe I could do something like that in my community and know who to call and know who to reach out to. We have our partner, Jeremy's going to be sitting up here with some minute signs to let you know when 5 minutes is up, when you have 1 minute left, and when we're wrapping it up. We have a lot to go through today. We hear all the time that people are finding solutions. It doesn't help anyone if I know all the great work that's being done around the state, if the people who are working on this on the ground don't also know that. This is being filmed as well, so we'll do 10 minutes per presenter. Following that, we'll go into a very quick 5 minutes of question and answer. If you have questions that you feel like could benefit the rest of the group, please feel free to ask them, but know that the goal of today is giving you the contact information to be able to follow up with next steps afterwards. It's being filmed, so if you don't have a mic and have a question, I will try to repeat it so that it is for recording. And additionally, we'll be doing pictures following each presentation as quick as we can with everyone from that coming up front, taking a quick snapshot. For those that know me, public information is not necessarily my strong suit. It's typically something I tolerate, but it's incredibly important that we all understand for this crisis, the more we elevate this conversation, the more we use our media channels, the more we use our public information and put those things out there, the more leverage we have, the more traction we have with the community to continue doing the work on the ground. So with that, I'm incredibly happy to bring up our first session presenter, Tyrone Roper from Baltimore Behavioral Health Systems. Baltimore is going to talk to us a little bit about the law enforcement assisted diversion program that they've gotten up and running in their city.